Welcome to the Grace Story Podcast, where inspiring stories are brought to life. This podcast is made possible by Grace College and Seminary, located on the shores of Winona Lake in the great state of Indiana. I'm your host, Dr. Drew Flam. This is the Grace Story Podcast. Today I have with me Clint Johnson, affectionately known as Clintdawg. Clint is a Grace College graduate and works here at Grace in the Health and Wellness Center. Clint is known as a constant encourager and overcomer and a massively huge sports fan, particularly of the Grace Lancers. Clint, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me, Drew. It's an honor.
So I just heard something that I have to ask about, and that is, for Christmas one year, you asked for an Encyclopedia Britannica. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I was thinking, I was in third grade, and I loved learning even more than I do now, I think. Back then I wanted to know about every JFK, whatever it was. And so we had just moved into our new house at Stonehenge, and I remember, I forget the exact, where they took me when I got it, but I think they took me into a special room, and I was just really excited about this encyclopedia set. And because back then we didn't have the internet. We didn't have any, you couldn't just go on Wikipedia and read about like Oscar Robertson or George Washington. So that was really awesome. And, it was really my first kind of look at knowledge as a whole.
Wow. So you've always loved reading and learning.
Yeah.
And you've always loved words, right?
Oh, yeah, puns. I'm a huge pun guy, for real.
The Clinterverse, the Clintastic. I think you've made up a few for me over the years, too, if I remember correctly.
Oh, yeah. I don't remember exactly what they were, but I'm sure they were epic.
I also heard you're a little bit of a poet. You've written some poetry, wrote poetry at Thanksgiving or different times.
Yeah. I like to make things rhyme. One of the first ones I remember writing was a poem about the Bulls back in elementary school when they had Jordan and Pippen. And then I think in high school I wrote one about fall and football. I wish I had copies of that. It's living along those still somewhere, but
wow.
Yeah, I love to rhyme.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
Well, one of the things I love about you, Clint, is if I had to name some of the most encouraging people I know in the world, you'd be one of them. Just positive, upbeat. Is that something you've always had? Is that something you developed, this positive outlook on life? Tell us how and why you have such an encouraging, positive outlook.
I think all the credit and glory goes to the Lord for that. I've had it as long as I remember. I mean, I have my down days, days that are tougher, like everyone does. I don't want to seem like I'm on cloud 10, 25/8, or 24/7 or whatever, But definitely, I think just the Lord, the joy that He gives me, I'm able to use my spiritual gifts to encourage people through it. And, even on my tough days, I realize that there's others going through things much worse than me. And so I think that's a way that the Lord strengthens me.
Wow.
Yeah.
What, have you always been that way, as far as you can remember, just an encourager of others?
All the way back to preschool or elementary school, yeah.
That's awesome. I'm sure that's been such a blessing to your family and friends. I know it's been a blessing to me as well.
Thank you.
Something else that's unique about you is you're like a social media expert. Like you, you've got more friends than I'll ever, imagine having. And a lot of us, including myself, look to Clint's Facebook page to get our sports news before we go to the actual news. So yeah, tell me about your love for social media. And, that's only been with us for, say 12, 13 years. How did you get into social media? What has that sort of meant for you?
Well, the first social media, do you remember Zanga? I think Steph, your wife had one. I think
I did have Zanga. My problem is I didn't have enough feelings to share. But yeah, I remember Zanga.
That might be how we connected first, I think. And so that was my entry into social media. And, I love that. In fact, I still go look on the web archive and try and find all the Zengas of
Is
old.
it like even a thing anymore, Zanga?
No, it's extremely young. Like, you have to pay big bucks. But a lot of them are on the web archive, so I like going back and just reliving out memories. And so from there, I remember I was sitting up in the computer lab one day, and I'd heard about the Facebook, and schools like Harvard had it. And I found out that it was going to be able to be used by everyone. And so I looked into it, and immediately, like, I found all these people that I knew. And I've always loved just connecting with people. Social media is something that, like, with the advent of Facebook and then Twitter and Instagram, I kind of post the same thing on all three networks a lot of times. And what's cool is I can go back and look at what I've posted and how people have connected and encouraged me. So I think that's something that, just whenever I'm bored at home or whenever I, don't have much to do, I go back and look through my old social media posts, and, that I think in turn kind of feeds how I like to encourage people, because I'll see somebody's name pop up and I'll send them a text or send them a direct message through that. So, yeah, that's kind of how it started. And, hopefully Facebook doesn't die down anytime soon, because I'd be sad.
Do you have like because you're prolific, and people like study this stuff and try to be really strategic on their use of social media. I mean, do you have like a strategy, or do you just post whatever comes to the Clint mind?
Post whatever comes to the Clint mind, and then sometimes I'll delete it, like, because obviously I work for Grace, and I want to, I don't want to say anything that maybe they wouldn't approve of, and so sometimes, my mind is, it races, and so I'll post something, and I'll be like, scratch that, delete that. But, I don't post as much about politics as I used to, because that's a polarizing topic. But
sure.
So I figure sticking to sports is usually pretty safe.
That I guess that is a pretty good philosophy,
or like
right
what
there.
I eat,
Stick
or
to
who
sports.
I hang out with. Yeah.
Sure, that's awesome.
Thanks.
So how do you gather your information to post? Because I mean, again, I literally will go to the Clintdawg Facebook. Before I go elsewhere to get my sports news, because you are sometimes more up to date than anyone else. So how have you become sort of the gatherer and disperser of information?
Just through all the apps and my Twitter feed. Like, I have an app called The Score on my phone, and like, so that'll update me on scores. And then, a lot of my Twitter contacts follow people that tweet about sports, and so, like, I'll see John Rothstein, college basketball analyst, pop up with something. Or lately it's been the Steve Alford thing. He used to be my neighbor when he coached at Manchester.
Okay.
And so I've just been like, I'll search different things, like for Nevada athletics, and once I search something, I go back and just keep checking it as much as I can. And I think that's how I stay on top of it, or at least try to.
Do you have people who are reaching out to you with score updates on games or things that are going on, say, at the high school level, because they kind of know you're a gatherer of information?
Every once in a while. I mean, it's not all the time, but every once in a while somebody will say, hey, did you see this? Every once in a while.
And usually you tell them, yeah, I saw that. I knew that like hours ago. Thanks for letting me, because you're always up to date.
But then there's that rare time I totally didn't see it. Like, I think the St. Joe coach, Phil Martelli, retired, and I don't think I had seen that, until just a few days ago, so. And I think that's how God keeps me humble. He knows everything, and I know just a little bit.
That is true of all of us. You do have a steel trap mind, though.
Thank you.
And tend to remember names and stats and events. Has that just been a gift God has given you that you've always had, to be able to remember?
Yeah. And like, do you mind if I tell a quick anecdote?
Go really for it. That's what we're here for.
Conner Prairie, it's in Indiana. It's like I forget if it's Revolutionary or Civil War, but when I was in, I don't know whether it was kindergarten or like early elementary school sometime, I went down there, and you know how they're back in that era. Like, so they say that, I don't know, Lincoln or somebody's the president. But I was like, hey, can I say something? And I was like, Ronald Reagan's actually the president right now. So yeah, I think I knew a little bit too much for that, So sometimes my mind just gets carried away. But I love it. It's all glory to God for that.
That's awesome.
Thanks so much.
So sports, you have a love of sports. So
Yes.
do you have a favorite sport?
Basketball.
And college basketball,
Yeah.
presumably? Okay.
And it was Duke, but I'm thinking about abandoning that again. By the time this podcast airs, who knows what it'll be. I'm starting to think I might just say I support all teams. Because
you can actually more than one team. That's okay.
Other than Grace and Warsaw, I'm wide open.
There you go.
People, if you contact me on social media for why I should cheer for your team.
This could be quite the contest for sure. So, has that love of sports always been there, or how has it grown over the years?
Yeah, well, see, my dad, before he retired, was a physical therapist. And so I would always go to sports games with him. Like, most of you people now know about the MOCC, but I was around in the old Lancer gym days. I'm sure Coach Kessler kind of talked about that. And one of my favorite memories was when I was young and there was a school closure, typically Grace games would still be played. So, I'd be at home all day and, I missed the social aspect of being with my other friends because school was closed. And so coming to Grace games at night with my dad and just connecting with all the guys, that kind of, I think, spurred on my love for sports. And just, my family loves sports too. So we'd always have like a Sunday football game on after church or, a Cubs game on any weeknight, And just through, when I was younger practicing sports too, one of the memories I have is we would go shoot free throws or shooting contests for they used to have a shop out on 30 called Gimme Yogurt. And that was the big thing, let's go shoot for some yogurt. So that kind of spurred my interest in sports. And, just through being a manager in high school and college, in high school, I was a manager for the football team 1 year, the golf team for 1 year, and the basketball team for all 4 years, as well as girls softball my senior year. So in college, I was a manager for Coach Kessler. I think I was on a 6-year college plan, so I think for 4 or 5 of the years, I was officially a manager. And those things have all kind of just, helped me love and appreciate sports.
What is it about sports that you love?
I love, just the pursuit of excellence. And I love, even more than the strategy, people say I know a lot of stats. I like to know more about the people. I don't even know how many points Zion Williamson scored for Duke, but, I know that he went to Spartanburg Day School. I know that his stepfather played college basketball. So that's what I love is just learning about the people behind the sports. And I think that helps me appreciate what they do even more. To see that, every person that plays sports is a fellow human being and just, every day doesn't go perfect for them. I found that out with Duke, everybody thought they would win the title, but, Michigan State got us. And so just to think about the human element behind that and all the emotional preparation that goes in is inspiring to me.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
You just said that they got us, so I assume you're still putting yourself in with the Duke crowd right now.
I'm kind of undecided, but,
We'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
But even by the end of this podcast, folks can be commenting and sending you messages and starting to advocate for you to be a fan of their team.
Nice.
One of the things I also appreciate about you, Clint, is you've been willing to talk about your own challenges, disabilities. Tell us a little bit about your disabilities and growing up and how you've had the perspective of being an overcomer.
Well, I think I was in the hospital for several weeks right when I was born as they figured out what I had. And I have a facial paralysis syndrome called Mobius syndrome, where literally and figuratively, I never close my mouth because I'm always talking, but also my facial muscles don't allow for that. So the muscles in my face are paralyzed. And also, I think that somehow ties in with unique finger setup. Anybody who knows me knows that my fingers are truly unique. I don't have 10 full-fledged fingers like everyone else. I think I have maybe 6 or 7 tops. But, so I had to learn to do things differently from a young age. And some things are still a challenge. Like I wear Velcro shoes because tying shoes is a chore. I remember the time, not only did we play basketball for ice cream or yogurt, but my mom was like, or my dad was like, well, Clintdawg, or actually, I don't even know when I got started calling Clintdawg. They probably just said Clint. When you learn to tie your shoes, we'll take you to Dairy Queen for a little ice cream treat. And I remember, so I kind of semi-tied it and got it tied. But by the time we got to the shop, the ice cream shop, to get out of the car, my shoe was, the strings were discombobulated. It had totally come untied. So, but yeah, I always had to be an overcomer to learn how to do things a little bit differently. Like bowling, for instance, I can't bowl like normal. Riding, my hand always got a little bit sore and I would have to take breaks. And I think my parents always taught me that with God, anything was possible. And so I think my faith has allowed me to be an overcomer.
And it seems like you have utilized the unique way that God has gifted you to be positive and again to encourage others. You haven't seen it as a detriment. You've seen it as the unique way God's gifted you to be a blessing on this earth.
Yeah, because the Lord's plans are so perfect and not unlike ours, and so He has me right where He wants me, in the exact form that He wants me, and serving Him the exact way that He wants me. And so I definitely think that I've been able to tell others about, like little kids will come and say, one time somebody goes, did an angel kiss your fingers off? He was like a 4-year-old guy. And I was able to say, no, Jen, yeah, he was the person, not he, but God made me that way. I was able to say that attribute that back to the Lord, And I think every time I get asked, why my fingers are the way I am, it's an opportunity to share my heart for the Lord,
Wow.
And it's an opportunity to not be like a woe is me, because some people could have that attitude. It'd be very easy to have that attitude. But when I think about how the Lord blessed me, I can walk, I can talk, I can, do so many things. It's very hard to even be remotely upset with the few limitations I have.
Wow. I think that's just amazing. You talked about athletics just being the pursuit of excellence. And that seems to be what you are also saying here. Like, I'm going to pursue excellence wherever I'm at and whatever I'm called
Christ,
to do.
I can. Yep.
Right. Absolutely. And you've had unique opportunities to share Christ because of the way that He has gifted and created you. And your ability to speak and communicate well, and giving you ways and opportunities to do that. It's awesome. So thank you for using those gifts welcome. In that way. I also think you're a great friend. That's something that I've noticed about you. And we talked about it a little bit as an encourager, but you have more friends, but I think you also are a friend. So tell us a little bit about Clintdawg's keys to friendship. How can we have the authentic type of relationships that you seem to have with so many?
Well, I think you just got to be real with people, and, part of that is just, sharing your heart with them. Some of my best friends are people that I have, the deepest friendships with, and, we've walked through life together. Is it okay if I list a few of those people?
Sure, go for it.
Dave Artrip from Ohio. In fact, I'm going to call him tonight after this podcast because he'll probably want to talk to me about it. But he's been one of my very special friends since the Grace days. And just, his walk with the Lord is inspiring and it's encouraging to me. Another one would be Jared Yorty, who is on staff at the Grace Community Church of Willow Street out in Pennsylvania. And so many good memories with him. I mean, we would go, he was dating his current wife back at that time. Her name was Kim. And we would go to Ace Hardware before it closed and go on dates. For dates, he would buy her like sweet flowers all the time. And we would go get those. And I went to his house for an Easter or two. And just amazing things, and I thank the Lord for that. And then one that I've lost recently is Dean Sandy, who passed away, about a year and a half ago. And he was such an example, because he had to overcome a lot of things, such an example of the Lord to me, just because he didn't let his limitations get him down. He was involved in a lot of ministry and all that stuff. And something I really miss is him coming to visit me at work every day. Even on some rainy days, he would drive up in his golf cart to my house, pick me up and ask me if I would like a ride to work. And then after work, a lot of days, he'd be like, "Hey, Clint Dawg, you want to go to Dairy Queen tonight?" I'm like, "Sure." So I still go to Dairy Queen, but not near as often because it's not quite as enjoyable without the Ivan Dean Sandy.
When did you guys become friends, you and Dean?
Back when I was in third grade, we used to go to the Evangelical Presbyterian Church in Warsaw, but we switched over we had a lot of friends, Ken and Joanne Taylor. Ken was a prof here at the time, and they went to WLGBC, which is a church right by the rec center. And so we switched over to that church, and I met Dean because he was always an usher, and did the offering. And so I would sit up in the balcony, and that's how we got to know each other. And then back when I couldn't, back when I didn't live in Winona Lake, we didn't hang out as much. But when I moved here, he and I, our friendship just skyrocketed, and we hung out all the time.
Wow. All right, so Clint, one of the things we like to do sometimes on this podcast is just rapid fire ask some random questions, okay? And I think you'd be the best to answer random questions.
Sweet, I'm all for it.
All right, so my first random question is, who would you go to lunch with if you could, and why? Can be anybody in history except for Jesus.
Okay, I think Chris Burke, who was on Life Goes On, he's another guy who overcame challenges. He had Down syndrome. I just remember him being like a real go-getter, and I'd love to sit down and dine with that guy.
That's a name I don't even know, so I'll have to look that one up. That's
Google
awesome.
it up, look it up. Life Goes On, one of my favorite shows of all time.
So another one, a website you visit most every day.
Again, like when I was talking about the web archive in Zynga's, web.archive.org, you can see what yahoo.com looked like in 97 or 98. You can, go back and read Lancers scores from years gone by. So I'm on that site every day, multiple times.
All right. So who's your favorite current sports figure?
I would say probably Mike Krzyzewski until I totally drift away from Duke, because I love his enthusiasm, how he takes teams on journeys, and how he talks about savoring the moment. And so I really like his philosophy.
And you've met him a couple times, right?
Yeah. Should I talk about that?
Sure.
Okay, the first time I met him was in 2008, the tail end of the year, when Miles Plumley played down for him, because Miles was my next door neighbor growing up, and Mason and Marshall too. And so we were at a high school tournament called the GlaxoSmithKline Invitational. And so anyways, I went up to him at halftime because he was like signing autographs and stuff, and that was really cool. I got to say, I'm like, hey, I love your enthusiasm, and so it was a real quick meeting, but it meant the world to me. And then I don't remember exactly what year. I think it might have been the fall after they won the championship. Somebody fall 2010. Coach Kessler texted me one morning, and he's like, Clint Dog, you want to go over to the Q, the Johnson & Johnson company, because Coach K was speaking to employees that day. And so I remember we went in, and that just meant the world to me, because I never thought I'd get to see him in person like that again, But for Coach K, who, just means the world to me, to call him up, to call me up, to text me and say, come to the Q with me, why don't you? That meant the world to me. And to get to see one of my coaching heroes again, that was so awesome.
So you've seen him 2 times. Those are 2 times you've met him?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Well, Clint, I really appreciate you being on the Grace Story podcast, and thank you so much for your friendship and, again, your encouragement and just the light that you are to this campus and this community. We appreciate it so much, and thanks for joining me today. And I know you'll spread this far and wide, because you've got more reach than I do on social media by a ton. So appreciate it. And for all of you out there, please download the podcast and like it wherever you can find it. And enjoy this day and live your best grace story today.